At exactly 9:47 p.m., Rina signed a contract worth $7 million, and 2 minutes later, she opened her door to a mistake that would cost her far more. RinaVale had learned to control everything: her schedule, her emotions, her reputation. At 42, she was a self-made millionaire, the kind of woman whose heels echoed authority through glass corridors. People feared disappointing her more than losing their jobs. Loneliness, she told herself, was simply the price of excellence. That night, the city outside her penthouse was drowning in rain. Paris glimmered below like a restless beast, breathing light and shadow. Rina loosened her silk blazer, rolled up her sleeves, and stared at the contract still warm from her signature. Victory tasted bland when eaten alone. She hadn't planned to order pizza. In fact, she hated fast food, cheap calories, careless choices. But the fridge was empty. Her assistant had gone home early, and for the first time in weeks, silence pressed too close against her ribs. The doorbell rang. Rina didn't know it yet, but this sound, this ordinary, forgettable chime would replay in her mind for years. She opened the door without checking the intercom. He stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a cardboard box like an offering. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair plastered to his forehead. His age struck her instantly too young, almost unfairly so. 24 maybe, 25 at most. Pizza for RinaVale? He asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes weren't. There was something watchful in them. Something that didn't belong to a delivery boy. Yes, she replied, irritation sharpening her tone. You're late. He smiled, slow, apologetic, disarming. Traffic and rain. Bad combination. Rina noticed his hands as she reached for her wallet. Not soft. Not careless. Hands that had worked, struggled, carried weight. Keep the change, she said, already closing the door. But before it shut, he spoke again. You shouldn't leave your door open like that. Rina froze. What did you say? He gestured subtly toward the hallway camera behind her. It's not working. Flickering since last week. Her heart skipped once, sharp and unwelcome. That's not your concern, she snapped. He met her gaze without flinching. No, but it could become your problem. For a moment, they stared at each other. The power dynamic shifted, subtle, but real. Rina felt it and hated herself for noticing. She shut the door. The click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. Inside, Rina leaned against the door, annoyed at her own reaction. He was nobody. A delivery boy. Young. Temporary. Forgettable. Yet his eyes followed her even now, as if they had memorized her face. She opened the pizza box without appetite. Steam rose, warm and ordinary, but her thoughts were anything but, why? Had he warned her? Downstairs, Ramis returned to his scooter. Rain slid down his jaw as he removed his helmet. From the street, he looked up at the glowing penthouse windows. So, he murmured to himself, this is where you live. He didn't smile this time. Rina would sleep poorly that night. She would dream of doors left ajar, contracts bleeding ink, and a pair of eyes watching from the dark. And Ramis would memorize the building, the security shifts, the blind spots. Neither of them knew it yet, but their lives had already crossed a line that could not be erased. Part 2. The name that lingered too Eloangier woke before dawn, her body tense as if she'd been running. The dream clung to her. Rain, an open door, and eyes that refused to look away. She lay still, staring at the ceiling of her penthouse, irritated by something she could not define. Dreams were for people with time. She had meetings. By 8 a.m. she was already flawless, tailored charcoal suit, hair swept back with military precision. In the mirror she saw the woman the world feared and searched unsuccessfully for any trace of last night's unease. The day swallowed her whole. Boardrooms, forecasts, controlled voices around a long glass table. She dismantled objections with surgical calm, signed off on acquisitions, and watched men twice her age nod in agreement. Yet between numbers and signatures, a thought intruded. You shouldn't leave your door open like that. She dismissed it. Anyone could have said those words. Anyone, but they hadn't. That evening she returned home later than planned. The penthouse lights welcomed her like obedient servants, but the silence felt different now, thicker, almost observant. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Your intercom is fixed. Rina stopped walking. Her pulse rose, fast and unprofessional. She stared at the screen, rereading the words as if they might rearrange themselves. Rina. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, unknown number. Ramis. Pizza delivery. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She had never given him her number. Rina. How did you get this contact? A pause, longer this time. Ramis. Building management. I mentioned a safety issue. Rina exhaled sharply. Part relief. Part irritation. Part something far more dangerous, curiosity. Rina. That was unnecessary. Ramis. So is being alone in a place that big. Her jaw clenched. She should have blocked the number. She should have reported him. Instead, she typed, Rina. Thank you. The response came instantly. Ramis. You're welcome. One word. Yet it lingered like an unfinished sentence. Rina placed her phone face down on the counter. She poured herself a glass of wine she didn't need. The city lights flickered outside, restless and alive. She told herself she was annoyed. Down on the street, Ramis leaned against his scooter, phone in hand. He replayed the exchange once, then again. Her replies had been sharp, but she had replied. He knew women like her. Power wrapped around them like armor, but underneath, they were starving for something real. That night, Rina found herself standing at the balcony longer than usual. She watched the city breathe, cars threading through streets like veins. 4. The first time in years she felt seen, and it unsettled her. Her assistant called earlier to cancel dinner plans. Her mother's message remained unread. And still, one name refused to leave her mind. Ram is. She whispered it once, testing the sound. It didn't belong in her world. That was precisely why it echoed. Across the city, Ramis removed his uniform and sat on the edge of his bed. The room was small, cheap, temporary. But his thoughts were expansive, deliberate. This won't be fast, he told himself quietly. And it won't be easy. He opened a notebook filled with addresses, schedules, observations. RinaVale's name was now written clearly on the first page. Not as a target. Not yet. Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle and persistent. And somewhere between caution and desire, a line continued to blur. Rina told herself the second meeting was an accident. That was the story she chose to believe. It happened 3 evenings later, just after sunset. Her driver had called in sick, her assistant was unreachable, and for once, Rina decided to walk the short distance from her office to a nearby cafe. Independence, she reminded herself, was still hers. The cafe was quiet, wrapped in soft jazz and warm light. She ordered black coffee and opened her tablet, determined to reclaim the rhythm of her life. Then she sensed him. That subtle shift in the air, the feeling of being noticed. Rina. Her name, spoken gently, landed like a hand on her spine. She looked up. Ramis stood near the counter, no uniform this time. Dark jacket. Simple jeans. Clean. Intentional. Without the helmet and rein. He looked even younger and far more dangerous. You shouldn't be here, she said. He smiled faintly. I drink coffee too. This isn't funny. I didn't say it was. There it was again. That calm refusal to step back. Rina gestured to the empty chair across from her. The decision surprised even her. 5 minutes, she said. Then you leave. Ramis sat up close. She noticed the scar near his eyebrow, thin, old. Not the kind earned from carelessness. The kind life leaves behind. You didn't answer my question, she said. How did you know I'd be here? He met her gaze steadily. I didn't, I hoped. She should have stood up. Instead, she took a sip of coffee, her hand unsteady. You like control, Ramis continued. It shows in how you sit, how you speak, how you pause before answering. Rina's lips tightened. Stop analyzing me. Then stop inviting it. Silence stretched between them, dense with unspoken things. Outside, traffic whispered past. The windows. Why me? She asked suddenly. The question escaped before she could stop it. Ramis leaned back slightly, considering. Because you're alone, he said honestly. And because you don't think anyone notices. Her breath caught. She hated how accurate it felt. You don't know anything about me, she said. I know you ordered food you didn't want. He replied. I know you keep your lights on even when you're not home. And I know you sleep better when someone remembers you exist. The words struck deeper than she expected. Too personal. Too close. 5 minutes are up. Rina sighed, standing abruptly. Ramis rose as well. But instead of stepping away, he lowered his voice. I'm not your enemy. She laughed a sharp defensive sound. You're a stranger. For now. She turned and walked out, heels striking the pavement too fast. The night air felt colder than it should have. Behind her, Ramis watched her go. His expression unreadable. He hadn't planned to say that much. But something about her, the way she held herself together with sheer will, made him want to see what happened if she let go. At home. Rina paced the penthouse like a caged thing. She replayed every word, every look, angry at herself for caring. She opened her laptop, searched his name. Ram is. Nothing useful came up. No digital footprint worth trusting. That should have relieved her. Instead, it disturbed her. Later that night, her phone buzzed again. Ramis. I'm sorry if I crossed a line. She stared at the message for a long time. Then, against every rule she'd built her life upon, she replied. Rina, you did. A pause. Ramis. I'll be more careful. Her chest tightened. Careful was the last thing she wanted him to be. Outside, the city pulsed with life, indifferent and alive. And somewhere deep inside Rina, control, her most trusted ally, had begun to crack. Rina began lying in small, harmless ways. At least, that's how she justified them. She told her assistant she had late meetings when she didn't. She told her mother she was traveling when she stayed home. Most dangerously, she told herself that Ramis was just a distraction, temporary. Controllable, irrelevant. The messages continued. Not constant. Not desperate. Measured, almost respectful. Ramis, did you eat today? Ramis, the rain's bad tonight. Dry safe. Ramis, you don't have to reply. She replied anyway. Never immediately. Always after a pause that suggested indifference. She curated her responses the way she curated her life. But something in her had shifted. On Thursday evening, she canceled a dinner with investors she'd known for years. Instead, she found herself walking without direction, coat pulled tight, until she realized she was standing outside the same cafe. Ramis was already there. Not waiting at the door. Not scanning the street. Just sitting inside, reading as if coincidence still ruled the world. When he looked up and saw her, he didn't smile. He simply closed the book. You're late, he said softly. She exhaled, irritated at the familiarity. I didn't say I was coming. No, he agreed. But you came. They sat in silence longer this time. No analysis. No challenges. Just the quiet awareness of each other's presence. Rina noticed how young his face looked when he wasn't guarded. She wondered what had hardened him so early. Why delivery work? She asked suddenly. Ramis hesitated, then shrugged. It's temporary. Everything is, she replied. He studied her then, carefully. Not everything, he said. Some things stay. Even when we pretend they won't. The words settled between them, heavy and intimate. That night, she invited him to walk with her. Not to her penthouse. Not yet. Just through the city. They passed shuttered shops and glowing windows. Two lives misaligned by years, but moving in the same direction. Ramis spoke about his childhood in fragments. Too many cities. Too little stability. A father who disappeared. A mother who taught him how to survive, not how to trust. Rina listened, surprised by how much she wanted to know. She told him almost nothing about herself. That was her advantage. When they stopped at a bridge overlooking the river, she rested her hands on the railing. The water below reflected broken pieces of light. "You should stop seeing me," she said quietly. Ramis didn't ask why. He stepped closer, close enough that she felt warmth. "Then tell me to," he said. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That silence was her answer. Later, alone in her penthouse, Rina stood in front of the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Her phone buzzed. Ramis, "You're not as untouchable as you think." She didn't deny it. Across the city, Ramis lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He had crossed another line, one he'd promised himself. He wouldn't. This was no longer curiosity. And it was no longer safe. Somewhere deep in his past, a door he kept locked began to open. And behind it waited consequences he hadn't planned for. Rina discovered the truth by accident. That was the cruelest part of it. It began with a name spoken to, casually in a boardroom. "Vale Tower security contract needs review," her legal advisor said. "There were complaints last year. An internal breach attempt." Rina looked up sharply. "Breach attempt?" "Yes," he continued, scrolling. "Nothing successful. But there was an investigation. A young man was questioned and released. No charges. Case went quiet." Something cold slid down her spine. "Name?" she asked. He read it aloud. RamisKhalid. The room blurred. Rina forced herself to remain still. Her expression unchanged. Power was about control, especially when the ground shifted beneath you. "Send me the file," she said calmly. Back in her office, alone, she opened the report. Dates. Photos, surveillance stills. There he was, not in a delivery uniform, not smiling, standing near her building, watching, waiting. Her hands trembled for the first time in years. The report was incomplete, but enough. Ramis had been investigated for attempting to access restricted residential data, tenant schedules, security blind spots, emergency overrides. Her building. Her life. That evening, she didn't answer his messages. Or the next. By the third unanswered call, her silence became deliberate. Ramis felt it immediately. The air between them, once warm with tension, turned sharp and thin. He knew this moment would come. He just hadn't expected it so soon. She confronted him. 2 nights later. In her penthouse. The door opened, and for the first time, she didn't step back to let him in. She stood her ground. "Tell me the truth," she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were not. Ramis closed the door behind him slowly. "I was going to," he replied. "When?" she demanded. "After you memorized my routines? After you learned when I was alone?" He flinched, not from the accusation, but from the accuracy. "I didn't plan to meet you like this," he said quietly. "I didn't plan." "You?" She laughed, hollow and sharp. "You expect me to believe that?" "No," he admitted. "I expect you to hate me." He told her then. About the investigation. About the desperation. About the man who once lived in this building, a man who ruined his mother's life and vanished without consequence. "I wasn't here for you," Ramis said. "I was here for answers." Rina felt her knees weaken. "And now?" she asked. His voice broke for the first time. "Now I don't know who I am here for." Silence swallowed the room. Rina turned away, staring out at the city she once ruled without fear. Every memory replayed itself differently now. Every look. Every word. "You used me," she said. "Yes," he whispered. "And then I stopped wanting to." That was the most dangerous truth of all. Rina faced him again. Tears burned, but did not fall. "Leave," she said. He didn't argue. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth," he said. "I never meant to hurt you." She didn't answer. The door closed. This time. The sound felt final. Rina sank into a chair, her chest tight, her breath uneven. Love, she realized too late, wasn't always born from lies. Sometimes it was the lie itself. And somewhere in the city, Ramis walked into the night knowing one thing with certainty: he had lost her, or so he believed. Rina did not cry after he left. She had cried over losses before. Failed deals, broken alliances, betrayals wrapped in suits and smiles. This felt different. This felt personal. For days, she moved through life like a machine. Meetings were efficient. Decisions were ruthless. No one noticed the absence behind her eyes, the way silence followed her like a shadow. She erased Ramis's number, then memorized it again. At night, she replayed the security footage in her mind. Him standing near her building, watching. Had his concern ever been real or just practice? That question hurt more than the answer. Across the city, Ramis unraveled. Quietly, he stopped delivering pizza, stopped answering calls. The small room he lived in felt tighter, suffocating. He told himself he deserved this. The past had a way of collecting debts. A week later, Rina received an anonymous envelope. No return address. No explanation. Inside, a single photograph. Her building. Her balcony. Taken from the street. Her breath caught. At the bottom, written in ink she didn't recognize. You're not the only one being watched. Fear crept in where anger had lived. Rina contacted her head of security immediately. Systems were checked. Patrols doubled. Everything came back clean. Too clean. That night, she didn't sleep. She stood by the window, phone in hand, fighting herself. Calling Ramis felt like surrender. But not calling him felt dangerous. She typed, Rina, did you send this? Minutes passed. Then, Ramis. No, a second message followed almost instantly. Ramis, you need to be careful. Her chest tightened. Rina, you don't get to warn me anymore. Ramis, I know. But someone else is close. Closer than I ever was. The fear sharpened into something cold and focused. Who? She whispered to the empty room. Ramis didn't reply. Instead, he stood across the street from her building, hidden in shadow. He had recognized the angle of the photograph. Immediately. Someone was using his past, and they knew exactly how to hurt her. From her balcony, Rina sensed movement below. Not saw sensed. The city lights flickered. For the first time in her life, power did not feel like protection. It felt like exposure. And somewhere between betrayal and survival, she realized something terrifying. Ramis might be the only person who understood the danger. Rina collapsed in the quietest way possible. Not in public. Not with screams or tears that others could witness. She broke alone. In the darkness of her penthouse, where strength had always been enough until it wasn't. It happened at 3:12 a.m. The city slept below her. Unaware, Rina sat on the floor beside her bed, back against the wall, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. The photograph lay on the table in front of her. She stared at it until the edges blurred. For years, fear had been a concept, something managed by contracts and cameras. Now it lived in her chest, tight and unforgiving. Her breathing quickened. Control slipped. And when it did, everything she had built came crashing down. She called him. The line rang once, twice. Rina? Ramis answered. Already awake. Her voice shattered the moment she spoke. I can't do this, she whispered. I don't know who to trust anymore. Silence on the line, heavy, careful. I'm coming, he said. No, she said quickly. You're not. I already am. She didn't argue. 20 minutes later, a soft knock echoed through the penthouse. Rina opened the door and stepped aside. No words left. Ramis took in the room, the disorder, the lights still on. The woman unraveling in front of him. For the first time since they met, he looked afraid. She tried to speak. Failed. Her legs gave out. Ramis caught her before she hit the floor. The sobs came, then violent, uncontrolled. Years of restraint dissolved in his arms. I built everything, she cried. And I still wasn't safe. He held her without judgment. No advice. No promises. Just presence. I thought loving someone made me weak, she said between breaths. But losing you almost destroyed me. Ramis closed his eyes. I never meant to be your weakness, he said quietly. I wanted to be the thing. That didn't lie. She pulled back, searching his face. Was any of it real? Yes, he said without hesitation. All of it. They stayed like that for a long time. No kisses. No illusions, just two people exposed by fear. By dawn, exhaustion replaced panic. Rina slept on the couch, her hand still gripping his sleeve. Ramis stayed awake, watching the windows. Someone out there was moving pieces. And this time, he wasn't. Going to run. Morning light crept into the penthouse like an intruder. Rina woke with a dull ache behind her eyes and a weight in her chest she couldn't shake. For a moment she forgot everything. Then she saw Ramis. He stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. The sight grounded her and frightened her at the same time. When he noticed she was awake, he ended the call. They're watching, he said simply. Rina sat up. Who? The man I told you about, Ramis replied. The one who ruined my mother. He handed her his phone. On the screen was a photo, new, unmistakable. Rina stepping out of her office building the previous evening. Taken from across. The street daughter's stomach turned. He knows about you, she said. Ramis nodded. And now he knows about us. They moved fast after that. Rina postponed meetings without explanation. Her security team was instructed to cooperate with Ramis reluctantly at first, then with urgency when he showed them evidence. The name surfaced by noon. VictorHaled, a former real estate magnate with a talent for disappearing consequences. He had lived in Rina's building years ago. He had also vanished from Ramis's life without ever paying for what he'd done. He doesn't lose control, Rina said after reviewing the file. He collects it. Ramis's jaw tightened. He likes to remind people who really owns the past. That afternoon, Rina received a call from an unknown number. She answered. Impressive security, a man's voice said calmly. Still full of blind spots. Rina didn't flinch. Who is this? She asked. A soft chuckle. You already know. The line went dead. The fear returned, but sharper now, focused. That evening as the city darkened, Ramis made a decision. He wants leverage, he said. And I'm it. Rina stepped toward him. No, you're not bait. He met her gaze steadily. You're not untouchable anymore, he said gently. And I won't let you pretend you are. They stood inches apart, tension humming between them. Not romantic. Not yet. Resolved. Outside somewhere in the city, VictorHaled watched the lights of the penthouse flicker on. The game had begun. The message arrived at midnight. Unknown number. Come alone. Or she pays for your courage. Ramis stared at the screen, his pulse steady in a way that scared him. This was it. The end of waiting. He didn't tell Rina, not because he didn't trust her, but because he knew she wouldn't let him go. He left a note on the counter instead. Whatever happens, remember this was my choice. By the time Rina found it, the city was already moving against her. She called him. Once, twice, a third time. Desperation clawing at her throat. No answer. Fear hardened into resolve. Rina activated every resource she had, security, legal contacts that owed her favors from years ago. Power, she realized, was still hers. It just needed direction. Ramis arrived at the abandoned riverside warehouse just before 1 a.m. The place smelled of rust and water and old secrets. VictorHaled was waiting. Well, Victor said lightly, stepping out of the shadows. Delivery boys always arrive on time. Ramis didn't react. You destroyed my mother, Ramis said. And you never paid. Victor smiled. History is written by people who can afford lawyers. The gun appeared without drama. Ramis didn't step back. You think she loves you? Victor continued. She forget you in a month. Women like her always do. Ramis laughed softly. You're wrong, he said. And that's why you're scared. The gun fired not at Ramis at the ceiling. Enough. Rina's voice echoed through the warehouse. She stood at the entrance, flanked by security and flashing police lights outside. Her eyes locked on Victor's. You wanted leverage, she said calmly. Here it is. Victor turned slowly, fury cracking his composure. You chose him, he spat. Yes, Rina replied. I did. The standoff ended quickly after that. Victor was arrested screaming about debts and memories no one wanted. Ramis collapsed to his knees, the tension finally breaking. Rina ran to him, pulling him into her arms without hesitation. 4. Once she didn't care who saw. Part 10, The Dawn After the Storm, Hopeful Ending. The first light of morning painted the city in shades of gold and silver. Rina leaned against the balcony railing, feeling the air fill her lungs differently than before. The storm of fear, betrayal, and secrets had passed. What remained was quiet. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe without strategy. Ramis joined her, hands in his pockets, tired but alive. They didn't speak immediately. Words felt unnecessary. Instead, they simply watched the city wake. I never thought I'd see this, Rina said softly. Her voice carried both relief and something unspoken possibility. Neither did I, Ramis replied. But some things are worth surviving for. She looked at him, searching for the man she'd come to care for amid chaos. He met her gaze. Without fear or pretense, I won't pretend the past didn't happen, she admitted. I won't pretend it was simple. You don't have to, he said. Just don't run from what comes next. Rina smiled faintly, a small curve. That felt revolutionary. The walls she had built around herself didn't crumble entirely, but a door had opened, and this time, she stepped through it willingly. Weeks passed. Victor Hale's threats became a distant memory. Rina returned to work, not as the woman who feared shadows, but as one who had learned to navigate them. Ramis stayed by her side, still young, still learning, still mysterious, but no longer a stranger. Together, they began rebuilding trust in quiet, deliberate steps. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rina prepared dinner in her penthouse. No contracts. No corporate obligations. Just the two of them and the city sprawling beneath. Ramis placed a hand on hers across the table. You're still untouchable, he said softly. In ways that matter. She laughed, a sound light and free. Maybe I just needed the right reason to lower my guard. Outside, Paris glittered alive, relentless, beautiful. And for Rina and Ramis, the future was no longer a set of rules or fears. It was a choice. The door was no longer a threat. It was an invitation.